Hello class, and welcome to Team Three's presentation for our presentation of the article, Through the Eyes of the Whistleblower. I am joined by my colleagues Jackie, Raphael, Max, Jake, Corey, and Eric. During the course of this presentation, we will outline a summary of the problem at hand, dilemmas and inherent risks presented in the article, key stakeholders, and 3 possible solutions that could be acted upon to rectify the situation. The article focuses on Sherry Hunt, a VP and chief underwriter at Citi Mortgage in 2011. She experiences a quick ascent up the leadership chain and supervises 65 employees directly. Her and her colleague witness fraudulent and defective mortgages being underwritten by staff members at a rate 60 to 80%, which far exceeds their company's tolerance. She brings this to her superior's attention, but to no avail. Hunt begins to see less defective mortgage rates, as she has been demoted and relegated to managing only 2 employees after attempting to be a whistleblower. But email chains allow us to assume that these underwriters are using fraudulent numbers now to hide the true defective rates. She has attempted to report these actions to the SEC and FBI. Her supervisors are threatening her at the company that she works at. Ultimately, Hunt wants to leave Citi but cannot, and she wants to report these actions to a federal agency, but is not heard. She is left with nowhere else to turn. Next, Eric and Corey will cover the risks and dilemmas presented in this story.
Sherry feels an ethical responsibility to expose the fraud within Citibank, but she has already spoken up internally to no avail. Citibank's corporate culture has been clearly rewarding their understating of defective mortgage numbers and shaking up the corporate leadership team every few years, making it difficult for anyone in power to truly grasp the scope of this fraud. However, the idea of blowing the whistle on Citibank is scary. Sherry is nervous about potential repercussions blowing the whistle could have on her professional life, that it could affect her future employment at Citibank, which is especially scary because of how difficult it has been for her to look for other jobs recently. And while Sherry can choose to remain anonymous under the protections of Sarbanes-Oxley, she's still nervous that they might still be able to trace this back to her, given the concerns she has already raised internally. Sherry faces a moral and ethical dilemma, and now I'm going to pass it over to Corey to discuss the risks associated with this situation.
Thanks, Mike. The fraudulent actions witnessed by Ms. Hunt exposed the inherent risks to Citi Mortgage. The reputational risks included damage to the Citi brand name, creating systemic harm to the mortgage industry by eroding the public trust, and Citi would get a reputation for encouraging its employees to push defective mortgage applications to meet their quotas. The legal risks included violating the laws governing mortgage lending practices for loans backed by Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, and FHA by accepting these defective applications. And then, even more startlingly, violations of Section 922 of the Dodd-Frank Whistleblower Protection Laws by threatening Ms. Hunt and her career. Next, Jackie will discuss the stakeholders. Jackie?
There are many stakeholders in this case that range from associates at the firm to the U.S. regulatory committees. First and foremost is the stakeholder Sherry Hunt, who the case revolves around. Other stakeholders include mortgage holders, prime and subprime holders, and investors who have invested in these securities. As a whole, Citibank as a firm is a primary stakeholder, as well as all associates who work for the firm, as they are affected by any actions or lack of actions the firm takes. Citibank's executive board is a major stakeholder, as they turn a blind eye to warnings from Hunt and her team. Lastly, the U.S. government, as well as multiple governmental agencies, such as those listed on the slide, play or have the potential to play a major role in this case.
For potential whistleblowers like Sherry Hunt, doing nothing is always an option. And there are a number of reasons why doing nothing might be the most appealing plan of action for Mrs. Hunt. For example, taking further action could result in her losing her job, and receiving other employment is unlikely for her at this time. Similarly, Mrs. Hunt would likely burn bridges by reporting Citi to the authorities. Additionally, regulators haven't listened to her warnings so far, so if authorities don't respond, reporting the fraud could put her at risk without any real benefit. And if they did go through with legal action, the proceedings would likely be time-consuming and taxing for Mrs. Hunt. Lastly, Given her previous failed attempts to raise the alarm, Mrs. Hunt could feel discouraged and believe that someone else is better suited to report the fraud.
I'll be covering solution number 2, which is for her to remain at Citi and file a whistleblowing lawsuit as a confidential informant. Leaving Citi to file a lawsuit in the current economic environment is not a viable option, as she has already sold many of her assets to cover cost of living, and we've seen that anonymous tips are no help. Some pros of filing a lawsuit confidentially is the protection against the further negative repercussions and victimization of Citi. She remains at her job and financially secure, still protected by the Dodd-Frank Act and is eligible for an award if she's represented by an attorney, and assists the investigation by providing continuous malpractice and wrongdoing. Some cons is that confidentiality is not anonymity. The role of a confidential whistleblower is emotionally exhausting. Confidential informants are not protected by countersuits from Citi, and Citi was labeled a systematically important financial institution, and the findings may not be substantial enough for the U.S. government to act.
So I will be going over the third solution, which would be leaving Citi and filing a whistleblower lawsuit. What she can do is quit her current position, meet with an attorney, and file a whistleblower lawsuit. So after reporting anonymously to the SEC and the FBI tip line, there's been no action taken. So the last straw has happened, and Sherry should now leave her job. Some of the pros from this could be that she's protected by the whistleblower laws. Citi would probably not be able to sue her. Compensation is definitely higher if she wins the lawsuit, which would make losing her job a little bit easier. It also avoids reputational damage, can further stop corruption, and provide awareness to the U.S. government of possible corrupt practices. Some of the cons are that it could be a lengthy process. Her reputation and career could definitely be threatened if the allegations don't add up, and then Citi may be able to seize her laptop or other documents and deem them as material non-public information. We think this might be the best solution given the current situation that Sherry finds herself in, and the one that has a better payoff for her in the end.